Ranger's Spear is a very bursty weapon with a lot of versatility, making it great in PvP and World v World. So I'm going to show in this video the general spear mechanics, a build that I like to use in World vs World, and then some gameplay. So the reason why Spear is so versatile is because it has the option for ranged and melee attacks. So when I'm at range, my auto attack is ranged. When I'm in melee, it becomes melee and does a little bit more damage. And this means that there's not as much of a trade-off between, say, I'm using a full range weapon like longbow, but it's not so great in melee anymore because it has the trade-off of having that range. And then if you're using a greatsword, well, it's great in melee, but it's easy to kite because it doesn't have much range. So now when you've got the spear, you've got the option to constantly pressure enemies at range, but also you have great skirmishing with some melee attacks. So that's the one skill is pretty versatile, but the 2, 3, 4, 5 skills all have a synergy with stealth. So they all do a mechanic, and then in stealth they do like a stealth attack. So the 2 skill is a double hit in front of you. Not much to it, it's just a nice slash like that. But when you're in stealth, you can use that and it will do the same thing, but it does a little bit more damage with a third strike there. So I personally don't really like to use the stealth one there, but it's still there. It does a little bit more damage. The 3 skill is a spear, and it does extra damage to movement inhibited enemies. This is kind of nice with the build that I'm using because when I have opening strike, I cripple enemies, and so my spear 3 does extra damage to targets that have the cripple that I get from opening strike. So that's pretty nice, but when you're stealth, you actually get piercing and unblockable on your 3 skill, and that can be pretty nice against, you know, guardians or anything like that. So it generally does the same amount of damage. It does a little bit more damage when you've got the sneak attack, but it also pierces and it's unblockable. Now the 4 skill is a leap. So your 2 skill was a melee, the 3 skill is range. Now the 4 skill is like a kind of melee-ish leap. So you're going to leap in, and then if it's a stealth attack, now by the way, you can see the 5 skill gives stealth. So if you, and notice that the 2, 3, and 4, and 5 skills, they all have cooldowns. So they're stealth attacks, but they have cooldowns. So it's a little bit different from Thief. But yeah, if you use the 4 skill with the stealth, it's a daze now. It's a very long daze. So I think it's 2 seconds baseline, but I've got daze increasing. They actually nerfed the straight, so it's only 10% increase, but yeah, it's a daze. And that can give you some synergy with the, I'm using the Relic of the Midnight King here. But yeah, the daze is not too meaningful unless you're getting synergy from the Remorseless trait there, but I am, so it's really nice on this build to use the 4 skill with the stealth attack. So we can do stuff like that into the 2 with a guaranteed crit. And the 5 skill gives you stealth, but also it gives you Hunter's Prowess, which allows you to use your stealth attacks even when you're revealed, and it itself will turn into a stealth attack, which is a net, which will immobilize a target. And this actually does a decent amount of damage too. So don't sleep on that immobilize. You often want to use it. And since, for example, if you're using your 2, 3, and 4 skills, normally they might be on cooldown, and then you've got a choice between using the 2 or the 5. Well, sometimes you want to use the 5 when you're in stealth. So, and there's no other way to use that skill, right? Because the 5 from going in stealth is actually different from the one that you use to net. So using the net is kind of what you want to do often, because you can basically get that cooldown for free when you go in stealth, whereas the 3, 2, and 4 skills, they share the cooldown with their stealth abilities. So you can't use both. So anyways, that's kind of like the general spear mechanics. Now, the build that I'm using is just the normal Power Days Druid, but there's a lot of synergy with the spear instead of what I used to use before was the mace, but then you were double melee, or I used to use staff before, but that didn't work out so well because it was multi-hitter, and also they nerfed staff, so it's not as great. So spear is really great because the remorseless that gives you the opening strike is great for the single hitting attacks like the 3 skill, which can hit very hard. I've hit for like 6k with that on thieves, and also the 4 skill is also a single hitting attack, so you go in stealth, leap on them, and then you get pretty big damage. And then from there I also get the Midnight King relic to proc, and then from there I can go for, you know, the 3 skill. So the 4 and the 3 are single, and then the 2 is like a kind of like double or triple hit, so it's not as much value. But I am using the agility and vision sigil on my spear here, and energy cleansing on my greatsword. And it's dragon stats, by the way, with scholar runes. So we're getting value out of the crit chance that we gain from the opening strikes, so we can get those extra burst damage. And essentially the swap sigils here will trigger whenever you go into Celestial Avatar as a druid, and in World vs. World we get that every 10 seconds. And the reason for this is because you swap, right? It's like Necro Shroud or Legend Stance for a Revenant. You swap into that and it gives you your sigils. And so I can do some cool things where like I just swapped into the weapon, right? And then I use all the burst, and then I go into Celestial Avatar for a while. It obviously just procced it, but let's assume that it didn't proc it. And then I come out of CA, and because of Celestial Shadow, I go stealth, and that synergizes with my stealth attacks. Then I use the 4 skill into the 2 skill, but I've got the vision sigil triggered, right? And that means that I don't necessarily need opening strike because I've got 100% crit chance anyways. So yeah, you get extra 25% damage and the vulnerability as well from the opening strike, but you still get crits here, which are nice damage with the dragon stats. So yeah, that's pretty much the build. I showed the relic is Midnight King. You need that to get Fury on this build. Fury gives you the opening strike, but this is not like a full build guide, so we're just going to show the kind of like the rotations very quick. So Celestial Avatar gives you the 3 skill, which immobilizes and dazes. So we're going to use this to kind of like set up our combos, and it gives a Fury, which gives us opening strike. So we can do the 3 skill after we immobilize them, or we can do the Greatsword 2 as well. So it's essentially like you set up your combo with the ranged daze from the Celestial Avatar 3 and immediately swap out, and then you want to do like a burst skill, like a heavy hitting single target ability, and then that will give you a lot of damage. So we're going to go into Celestial Avatar here, do the 5 skill, 2 skill, and then we 3, leave, and use 2, big damage, and then we can follow up with the 5 into 2. Also, I'm using the Chak Striker. Now, the F2 here will daze, but we can also leap through it, which would be a lightning field if I somehow triggered the leap finisher into that, which would also be a daze. So leaps into lightning fields are dazes, and also this is a leap finisher too, so the Warclaw's Engage doesn't even need to be used in stealth, and you can still get a daze from it because of the Chak Striker. Oh, I think it's not dazing because these are, yeah, these mobs have the Defiance bar, so these ones would get dazed still. But yeah, essentially we're going to be setting up those combos with the Celestial Avatar. Go into CA, and then we can do this, put out that, do another daze with that while we're in melee range, and with the vision sigil still ready, we can use the 2, and then we swap to Greatsword. Do the 2, we can use the Glyph of Equality as well to trigger the opening strike. 5-2, you could use the Energy Pulse again. Greatsword 3 through it for the daze. Swap Pet also gives you Fury, by the way, because of the marksmanship trait here. So if you swap pet right before your Greatsword 2 lands, then you also get that to trigger. And that's pretty much the build. It's got a lot of versatility to it, and the 5 skill gives you a lot of stealth to disengage from fights, as well as the Celestial Avatar giving you a decent amount of cleansing and sustain. And then you'll get the stealth as well from that. So that's pretty much the build. Next, I'm going to show some gameplay, but I'm not going to commentate over it. Sorry about that, but if you do like this content, then please like the video, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.